What's wrong? You look awful, are you feeling sick? One weekend, my daughter suddenly covered her mouth with her hand, looking nauseous, and hurried to the bathroom. While surprised, all I could do was rub her back as she struggled and gagged. Even after the nausea had passed and I asked if she was feeling ill, my daughter insisted there was nothing wrong. Suspicious but worried, a possibility crossed my mind. Could it be that she was pregnant and experiencing morning sickness? But she's just 13 years old. Despite denying it, I couldn't shake off the possibility of pregnancy and became incredibly agitated. Feeling unable to keep it to myself, I consulted with my husband. Our daughter might be pregnant. However, contrary to my serious tone, my husband laughed it off, saying, "You're overthinking it." Haha, no way. She's a child, there's no way she could be pregnant, right? It's probably just a stomach bug or something. I'll take her to the hospital. My husband and daughter went out in the car. But as they didn't return even by nightfall, and unable to stand the worry any longer, I rushed to the police station. 3 days later, I received unbelievable news from the police, plunging me into despair. Please calm down and listen. Actually, the police revealed the whole story. My name is Chris. I'm a 43-year-old housewife, living with my husband Sean, our 13-year-old daughter Talia, and my mother who suffers from dementia. My daughter, who is in the 8th grade this year, is not rebellious and she talks a lot with me and with my husband. We go out for shopping and lunch, just the two of us, and she also goes out to play with her father. I think we're a pretty close family. Taking care of my mother with dementia is tough, but we manage somehow with the help of the day service facility and care managers. Until this moment, I had never imagined that this happy life could crumble so suddenly. The first sign of trouble was one Saturday morning. As I was relaxing in the living room, my daughter came rushing out of her room, her face pale. "Talia, what's wrong? You look terrible, are you feeling sick?" Surprised, I called out to her, but she covered her mouth with her hand looking nauseous and hurried to the bathroom. My daughter struggled and gagged in the toilet. While surprised, all I could do was rub her back as she struggled. Even after the nausea had passed and I asked if she was feeling ill, my daughter insisted there was nothing wrong. Sudden vomiting can't be nothing. Suspicious but worried, a possibility crossed my mind. The concern was that my daughter might be pregnant. I wondered if this nausea was due to morning sickness. I first considered possibilities like food poisoning or gastroenteritis, which commonly cause nausea, but no one else in the family had similar symptoms, and there seemed to be no obvious cause. Moreover, it felt unnatural how desperately my daughter was trying to hide her nausea. But she's just 13 years old. There's no sign of a boyfriend, and it seemed impossible that she would engage in such behavior. Despite my denial, I couldn't completely dismiss the possibility of pregnancy, and I became very flustered. However, if my daughter was indeed pregnant, it would be too much of a burden on her body. We would have to have a serious discussion about what to do next, including whether there might be someone involved. I managed to suppress my agitation and was about to ask my daughter about the situation when my smartphone rang. It seemed to be a call, and when I looked at the incessantly ringing phone, it displayed the name of the day service facility that my mother with dementia attends. A call from the day service usually means urgent business. Reluctantly, I glanced at my daughter before answering the phone. As expected, the person on the other end was frantic, asking me to come quickly because my mother was causing a disturbance. As her dementia has progressed, my mother occasionally throws tantrums for no particular reason. During such times, seeing my face calms her down and she becomes quiet, apparently mistaking me for her own mother. Given these circumstances, the day service staff has started calling me whenever they are in a tough spot. Although I hesitated to leave my daughter without having heard her story, I couldn't ignore my rampaging mother. So, I asked my husband to look after our daughter. But when I casually mentioned to my husband, who was relaxing in his room, that our daughter might be pregnant, he laughed it off in contrast to my serious tone. "No way. Talia being pregnant? That's crazy. It's probably just a stomach bug or something. I'll take her to the doctor, so Chris, don't worry and go pick up your mother." His reassuring words calmed my nerves. Yes, it is overthinking that 13-year-old daughter could be pregnant at any price. Besides, my daughter and I are quite close. She consults me about everything from school to friends, and I can't imagine her hiding something so significant from me. It must be my imagination, and she's probably just feeling unwell. Convinced, I left my daughter in my husband's care and headed to the day service my mother attends. Hours later, after I picked up my mother, who was in a good mood as usual because of my visit, I returned home to find my husband and daughter not there, and my husband's car gone. On the dining table, there was a note written by my husband saying, "Going to the hospital with emergency services," indicating he had indeed taken our daughter to the hospital. Grateful for my reliable husband, I started preparing dinner while worrying about my daughter's health. The hospital visit shouldn't take too long, I thought. Contrary to my expectations, it was evening, and they had not returned. Perhaps the hospital was very busy, but it was getting dark. Worried that it was getting too late, I tried calling my husband's smartphone, but couldn't connect. Even considering the hospital's policy on electronic devices, they don't require turning them off in the waiting room nowadays. Normally, my husband would at least have his phone on silent mode, not completely off. Suddenly feeling uneasy, I called several hospitals where he might be receiving treatment, asking if my husband and daughter were there. With strict privacy regulations nowadays, many hospitals wouldn't confirm whether they had visited today, but sensing my desperation, a few did respond. However, they all said that they hadn't seen them today. As night fell, there was still no sign of my husband and daughter returning home. With no phone connection and no record of them at any hospitals, I wondered where on earth they could have gone. Perhaps they were involved in some incident or accident. Unable to stay calm any longer with worry, I took my mother and went to the police station for advice. However, the police didn't take my concerns seriously. There has been no accident reported, and since the father is with her, it doesn't count as your daughter running away. You're worrying too much. They'll surely return soon, the officer said with a wry smile, trying to calm my anxious demeanor. Even so, the fact remained that my husband and daughter had not returned home. But the officer seemed uninterested in further discussion, so I reluctantly filed a missing persons report and started back home. After returning, I also contacted my in-laws and my daughter's friends to ask if my husband and daughter had visited them, but all the responses were, "They haven't been here." Trying my husband's smartphone again yielded no connection as usual. They might return nonchalantly at any moment. Believing that, I waited all night for their return, but by dawn, they still hadn't come back. With a new day, there might be some new information. Holding on to that slight hope, I visited the police station again in the morning. Desperately, I explained that my daughter might be pregnant and she looked unwell, so I was really worried, but again, the police didn't take me seriously. At this point, it doesn't appear to be any criminal activity, and there's nothing we can do. Their response almost seemed to say, "Please don't interfere with our work anymore," and I had no choice but to back down. 3 days after my husband and daughter went missing, the situation took the worst possible turn. I received a call from the police station where I had filed the missing persons report, and shockingly, they informed me that my husband's car was found in the sea. I had just dropped my mother off at the day service when I rushed to the police station. At the station, I received a report I did not want to believe. "Please calm down and listen. Unfortunately, your husband and daughter were found deceased with the car." I was at a loss for words, unable to comprehend immediately what had been said. My husband and daughter were found dead? Does that mean? Are you saying they are both gone? I muttered, to which the officer nodded with a pale face. "No, that can't be true. Why? Why my husband and daughter? Tell me it's not true." Overwhelmed by shock, I broke down crying on the spot. I couldn't believe that my precious husband and daughter were gone. I sobbed, asking the police if the bodies found could possibly be someone else who looked similar. But they confirmed there was no mistake, it was my husband and daughter, and I felt like I was losing my mind with grief. Hesitantly, the officer spoke to me. This is very hard to say, but could there have been a suicide pact? It seemed the police speculated that since I had mentioned the possibility of my daughter being pregnant, they theorized, maybe the husband impregnated his daughter and, fearing discovery by his wife, they chose to end their lives together. Such a thing is unimaginable for my husband. I trust him and denied what the police were suggesting. However, the police couldn't dismiss this possibility and asked me, "Had your husband and daughter been going out alone together recently?" "No, that's not possible." I tried to deny it, but I hesitated. Because I did recall recently seeing my husband and daughter whispering together often. Just like my daughter and I, my husband and daughter were close, and I had never felt anything amiss in our daily lives. However, thinking back, I wonder if my husband and daughter were not in close physical contact when they were sneaking around talking. Also, their expressions seemed unusually cheerful, or perhaps there was a different kind of intimacy than usual when they were together. My heart wavered between wanting to believe my husband was innocent and suspecting him. Unable to hide my distress, the police officer led me to the morgue. Lying in the cold room were undoubtedly my husband and daughter. Seeing the drastically changed forms of my beloved family, I broke down crying again. Why did my husband and daughter have to die? Just a few days ago, we were living what could be called a happy life, but now I feel thrust into the depths of despair. As I wept bitterly, the police officer handed me some personal items. Actually, we found these items in their pockets. Do you recognize them? Inside a clear plastic bag were a dragonfly glass bead strap and a USB memory stick. The dragonfly bead strap was from my daughter's pocket, and the USB memory stick was from my husband's pocket. Did my daughter even own such a strap? I was puzzled by the unfamiliar item. Then, I suddenly remembered that a friend of my husband's was a glass artisan. I seemed to recall seeing similar straps at his shop. He might know something. Thinking this, I informed the police about this friend and left the station. Days after the deaths of my husband and daughter, the situation took a dramatic turn. The police investigation revealed that this was not a case of murder-suicide or an accident, but a crime. The glass artisan, a friend of my husband, was arrested as a suspect. His statements and interviews with other parties brought various facts to light. Firstly, the dragonfly bead strap found in my daughter's pocket was something she had made to surprise me. Wanting to send something for my birthday, my daughter had consulted with my husband about what would make me happy. My husband remembered that his friend's glass workshop offered a hands-on experience in making small items, and they had visited the workshop several times together. The recent secretive talks and outings between my husband and daughter were because of this. When I had left on one occasion, my husband had asked our daughter if there was any possibility she could be pregnant. Turning pale, she confessed that the glass artisan might have acted inappropriately towards her. While they were making the strap at the workshop, my husband only did the pick-up and drop-off, leaving the daughter and the glass artisan alone for the actual work. The work was done in the back of the workshop, and my daughter fell asleep during the session, waking up with no memory of some time and her clothes in disarray. Confused, but seeing the artisan's usual demeanor when my husband picked her up, she thought she might have misunderstood the situation. Because she strongly hoped it was just a misunderstanding, she decided not to discuss it with me. Trembling, she told her father, who immediately bought a pregnancy test for her. Ultimately, she was not pregnant, and her symptoms resembling morning sickness were apparently due to psychological stress. Even though my daughter wasn't pregnant, if the glass artisan had indeed made advances on her, that would be completely unforgivable. To get to the truth, my husband and daughter quickly visited the glass workshop. As expected, at first, the glass artisan played dumb even when confronted by my husband. However, a sales operations clerk and former apprentice came forward and testified that on several occasions in the past, the master had used sleeping pills and committed indecent acts on customers during their handmade experience. He had been looking for a chance to expose the glass artisan's crimes and took the opportunity while my husband and the artisan were arguing to sneak into the office and copy incriminating images onto a USB memory stick. When he played the data on his laptop computer, they found several images of sleeping women stripped naked, including one of my daughter. Outraged by what he saw, my husband confronted the glass artisan, who claimed he did nothing beyond undressing them. Doubtful of his honesty, but realizing there were multiple victims, my husband urged him to turn himself in. The glass artisan seemed remorseful and agreed to my husband's suggestion. However, it was all an act. He asked my husband, who had driven there, to take him to the police station but requested to see the ocean one last time en route, and had my husband stop the car near the sea. Seizing the opportunity, he stunned my husband and daughter with a stun gun, rendering them unconscious. He then left them in the car, released the handbrake with the accelerator slightly engaged, and made the car plunge into the sea before fleeing the scene. According to his plan, the car carrying my husband and daughter fell into the ocean. They were gone forever. The crime came to light and led to the artisan's arrest thanks to the former apprentice. After seeing the news of my husband and daughter's deaths, the former apprentice suspected his master's involvement and reported it to the police. Following this, the police interrogated the glass artisan, who eventually confessed. This was how my husband and daughter met their tragic end. Afterward, I served as the chief mourner at their funeral. As visitors came to mourn, they all lamented their premature departure. Amid tears, my in-laws managed a strained smile and expressed their gratitude to me. They must have been happy to have lived with someone as loving as you. Thank you so much for everything. However, no matter how much my in-laws thanked me, my heart couldn't be lightened. I can never meet my beloved husband and daughter again, no matter how much I wish for it. Knowing how they died and that the perpetrator was arrested doesn't bring them back. I spent months in a daze, tormented by despair. In a house that once echoed with the laughter of my husband and daughter, now just living with my mother who has dementia. It was lonely and heartbreaking, nearly driving me insane, but having the responsibility of caring for my mother distracted me somewhat. Caring for my mother, who now needed my protection like my daughter did as an infant, might have saved me in a way. Months passed, and I gradually began to accept the reality of living without them. On a day when I felt I was starting to recover from the shock, friends of my daughter came to offer incense. Seeing her friends kneeling properly and putting their hands together in front of my daughter's portrait, I realized once again how blessed she was with friends, and it brought tears to my eyes. After offering flowers, her friends turned to me and shared something. Talia's mom, this is her social media account. It might be hard to look at, but we want you to know how she felt. One friend handed me a smartphone displaying photos and posts my daughter had shared. As I scrolled and read, I saw stories of our family outings and many words of thanks to me and my husband. Summer vacation family camping. Barbecue was super yummy. Today is Mother's Day. Thanks always, Mom. Oh, and Dad too. Along with these words were pictures of my daughter with a beaming smile. Seeing all her thoughts and smiles, I couldn't stop the tears from flowing. I hadn't known she had prepared surprise gifts or that she had a social media account where she made such lovely posts. I thought I knew everything about her since we were close, but I realized now that wasn't the case, and it brought on an indescribable flood of emotions. While engrossed in reading, I found a post about her dreams. I want to be a mom like mine also, I want to be a care worker. I want to help Mom, who's doing her best taking care of Grandma. I wish I could have heard these wonderful thoughts from her directly. Thinking about all the things that will never come to pass, all I could do was thank her friends. The glass artisan arrested as a suspect is currently on trial. Though not yet final, he is very likely to be convicted. With this case coming to light, he has been sued by other victims as well. Furthermore, his personal information was exposed online, leading to a massive backlash. He will face a harsh societal judgment even after stepping outside. The dragonfly bead strap, a piece of evidence, was returned to me by the police after the investigation concluded. Looking at it brings back memories of the crime and the perpetrator, but at the same time, it's the last gift from my daughter. And it was a silent message from her, wanting the perpetrator caught. Thinking this, I couldn't bring myself to discard it and resolved to cherish it. The grief of losing my husband and daughter is something that will never fully heal. However, cherishing the memories and what my daughter left behind, I must move forward. I believe that's how I can honor them. As the first step towards the future, I have started studying to become a certified care worker. To be of some help in caring for my mother with dementia. And to carry on the dream my daughter was unjustly deprived of.